Before we get into the topic, I would like to demonstrate my special ability of knowing your perspective very well. I almost want to say I can read your mind. To prove this to you, I will show you 6 playing cards and ask you to quickly choose one of them and remember it well. Are you ready? Let's go. Choose a card and memorize it well. I will now shuffle the cards and turn them all face up, except for yours. Please check if your card is the one that's facing down. If I have guessed your card correctly, you might be wondering where the trick is in all of this, or have you been able to identify it already? Let me show you the cards again, the ones from which you chose your card and the cards I showed you afterwards. Look very carefully. Of course I cannot read your mind, but I have taken advantage of the fact that our perception is selective. We only perceive a fraction of what is happening around us, and the task of quickly choosing a card forced your attention to narrow down on that card so that you didn't pay too much attention to the other cards. And therefore, you probably didn't notice that the cards on the next slide were similar, but not the same. Just as we focus on one card and block out or don't notice other information, our perspective on situations or challenges in our lives can also be limited. For example, when something doesn't work out the way we imagined, we tend to focus on that failure, that is, on what didn't work out. This is not problematic per se, but similar to the cards example, it only shows a narrow part of the whole picture. Changing perspective can help us look at something from other angles. For example, by putting on our learning glasses and ask, what can I learn from this situation? Or by zooming out and asking, how will I look back on this in 5 years and what will I be thinking about it? Or by putting ourselves in another person's shoes and asking, what would person X say about this? And this person can be someone in your immediate surrounding, or a well-known person, a role model, or someone who looks at things very differently than you do. Reflecting on such questions can help us to adopt new perspectives and thus avoid getting stuck or lost in one point of view. In doing so, we also actively counteract another cognitive bias that influences our perception, the so-called confirmation bias. We tend to perceive, select, and interpret information in a way that matches our expectations and beliefs. Let me illustrate this with an example. If something didn't work out for me, let's say my manuscript was rejected by a journal or a project budget wasn't approved, I may feel discouraged, feel like I failed, and be convinced that everyone else is doing much better than me and is more successful. Selective perception and the confirmation bias can mean that I'm very aware of others' success stories. That is, when they publish successfully, get project funding, or succeed at other things, while failing to see that others also experience rejection or failure. This happens rather unconsciously and can make us feel confirmed in our perspective, instead of recognizing that it only shows part of the picture. What can you do to gain new perspectives and not fall into the trap of confirmation bias? One proven method is the so-called DIVE method. The abbreviation stands for the steps describe, interpret, verify, and evaluate. In the first step, try to describe the situation or event as neutrally as possible. This is often easier said than done because we tend to move quickly into interpretation. Let us look at an example again. You're expecting feedback on a text from a colleague, but you haven't received it so far. So much for the description. What is your spontaneous interpretation? Perhaps that the person doesn't feel like supporting you, that the text is so bad that they don't even know where to start. Maybe that they've simply forgotten you. If such a rather negative interpretation has come up for you, you can also ask yourself what a more positive interpretation could be. Perhaps the person got sick, has had to deal with another urgent task at short notice, or has already replied but the email wasn't delivered. Perhaps there was an urgent private matter or a misunderstanding about the urgency of the feedback. In this step, the priority is to just find as many different interpretations as possible in order to broaden our own perspective. In the next step, we can consider what evidence we have for different interpretations and which one we think is most likely. To do this, we can ask ourselves what we don't know. This may sound strange at first, but it helps us to become aware of where we're making assumptions and what information we're missing. In our example, we might conclude that we just don't know why the colleague hasn't sent the feedback. To find out, we might decide to call the person and ask, instead of getting stuck in the perspective that the text was bad or the request was not important enough. Depending on our conclusions from this reflection or conversation with the other person, the evaluation might change. In this example, perhaps from self-doubt to understanding, when we realize that the person just got sick or there was a misunderstanding about the urgency of the matter. The dive method can help you to change your perspective, not to judge too quickly, and thus resolve worries, fears, frustration, anger, or even conflicts more quickly. Give it a try and let yourself be surprised by the new perspectives that you can gain.